We're following this breaking news impacting President Trump's immigration policy. In just the last hour here in New Hampshire, a federal judge issued a nationwide block against the president's order to end birthright citizenship. So that judge granted the plaintiff's bid for class action status, but ruled that the protected class does not include the parents of the children whose citizenship would be threatened. Last month, the Supreme Court limited the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions, but allowed parties to seek a block of the order through class action lawsuits. So then we go to California. Several groups, including the city of Los Angeles, are suing the Trump administration over immigration raids. A hearing on the case will be heard there this afternoon. But joining us now in the studio, we have Paola Ramos, the author and an MSNBC contributor, and Lindsay Kozlowski, president and CEO of the Immigrant Defenders Law Center. So welcome to you both. Lindsay, I want to reach out to you first. So this case in New Hampshire, I know you're not involved in this particular litigation, but give me a sense to your reaction to this ruling.
Well, this is undoubtedly good news for those of us in the immigrant rights movement. With the decision at the Supreme Court, it never said anything about the merits of birthright citizenship. And we know that the plain language of the Constitution says that all children born on U.S. soil are U.S. citizens by birth. That is their birthright. And so this case had to restyle itself after the decision at the Supreme Court that said they could no longer issue these nationwide injunctions. The ACLU and others filed within hours of that Supreme Court decision. This case in New Hampshire restyled as a class action lawsuit. And this morning is a huge win. And it will protect more than 150,000 children that will be born in the U.S. this year and make sure that they are given their constitutional birthright citizenship. It's an important win, and it shows us that when we fight in the courts, despite these limitations being put on us by the Supreme Court, we can still have big wins like the ACLU had this morning in New Hampshire.
Big win, but do you consider it a narrow ruling when we say that the ruling was that the protected class does not include the parents of the children whose citizenship would be threatened? I mean, explain that and how that manifests itself.
So we still don't have the written decision. That'll come out later today. But what this is saying is that the protected class are the children who are being born. And so that really has to do with who can bring this lawsuit. But they did certify that class of those children, and it will protect their birthright citizenship. So it is still an important win, but there'll be a lot of legal analysis in the hours and days ahead to look at that case.
So in the court documents, Paola, I want to get this right. The lawyers for the plaintiffs in this case, they wrote tens of thousands of babies and their parents may be exposed to the order's myriad harms in just weeks and need an injunction now. What is your sense to this judge's ruling?
I mean, I think we can anticipate the potential chaos. Now, this idea that you and I are even having a conversation about the fact that potentially at the end of the month, there could be 28 states that start revoking birthright citizenship. What that looks like on the ground is chaos. It looks like a potential new emerging humanitarian crisis within our borders. It looks like then the beginning of potentially mass statelessness. And so the question that haunts me is, for those people that belong nowhere in the eyes of a government, for those people that then cannot be repatriated back to countries, say Venezuela or Cuba, what happens to them? What is the administration capable of doing to people like that?
Wait, what does happen to them?
Well, that's the question. I don't know, right? Because precisely the 14th Amendment was written so that we would never be able to have this conversation, right? So that no executive power, no person, no sole institution could ever lead us to this conversation where suddenly citizenship could be defined by race, by heritage, or blood, which is something that, for instance, J.D. Vance is actively doing. But here we are. And so that is the question that haunts me. The most terrible form of cruelty is when you're able to dehumanize people. And so if the administration suddenly deprives people of their citizenship and their statelessness, what do? What happens to them? I don't know.
I would ask Lindsay the question, but I'm sure she doesn't know either. So I do want to ask you about another hearing that we're keeping an eye on. This one in Los Angeles, Lindsay. We have several organizations there, including your group and the state of California, suing the Trump administration over immigration raids across the city. And I know you've been representing people that were caught up in these raids. What are they experiencing?
What is happening in Los Angeles is truly unprecedented. We have the political theater of troops in the streets walking through MacArthur Park this week as, a show of force. Even our mayor showed up to ask them to leave. We have people who are being racially profiled. That's part of the lawsuit that will be in court on today, who are being racially profiled, who are being swept up. They're showing up at car washes. They're picking nannies up off of the streets. They are looking at street vendors and others and sweeping them up, violating people's constitutional rights. And then once they have people in their custody, they are keeping them in dungeon-like conditions. Just yesterday, we spoke to a man who has prostate cancer, who is very ill. He was held for over 4 days in a room with more than 60 people. He was unable to even lay on the floor fully to sleep. People are being held in conditions where sometimes the only access to water that they have is in the bathroom sink. These are absolutely deplorable conditions. And part of the challenge in this lawsuit is that they are also denying them access to counsel. Our lawyers and myself have been there and have even had force used against us, have had tear gas used against attorneys who are there trying to protect people's basic constitutional rights. LA right now is a city under siege by the federal government. And this is a fight that none of us can afford to lose, because it is a fight truly for whether or not the Constitution matters, whether or not the rule of law matters. And, here in Los Angeles, with our city and county and many of our local elected officials intervening in the lawsuit yesterday, we are presenting a united front that this cannot continue in our city, and this should not be happening in any city in the United States.
We will keep an eye on that hearing this afternoon. Just let me ask you quickly, Paola, your reaction. These are so often people who are just trying to work, make a living, provide for their families. I'm reminded of that one gardener outside of an IHOP in Orange County who was thrown to the ground, the father of 3 sons, all of whom served in the Marines.
I think what Lindsay's saying is completely right. The question is, what happens if no one is held accountable? What happens if we continue to normalize what Trump wants, which is to justify, or make us believe that ICE should have this unprecedented authority? Because in their eyes, let's remember, we're being invaded. And so for them, this is about justifying that violence, justifying all of that. And so when we start comparing this increasing ICE force to vigilantes, militia, some do it to Gestapo. The question is, once again, if they continue to operate with impunity, then you can start making those comparisons.
Paola Ramos, that is a sobering concept. Lindsay Kozlowski, thank you so much, and for all the efforts you are doing on behalf of so many of these people.